Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Parvesh Sherbar from Biochemistry Discipline, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today we are going to talk on module Biology of Fungal Diseases under the paper Molecular Therapeutics. This unit will give students an overview of the major fungal diseases, or the term called mycosis, that threaten human health. The causative agent of these diseases, their symptoms, mode of infection, prognosis of fungal related illness is discussed in this unit. The students will gain knowledge and requisite information to identify the causative fungal, its disease spectrum, classification of this disease pattern by defining the tissues, organs affected by this disease. The students are expected to identify the causative fungi causing the disease. Symptoms should be outlined and causes of human mycosis. Students are expected to determine the diagnosis of the disease and consult references and literature related to clinical mycology. Fungi. Fungi, as you know, are eukaryotes. And fungi, as you know, their adaptation and evolvement to diverse environment make them really diverse organisms. The adaptation to variety of environmental condition make them much more diverse. As you know, fungi can grow as unicellular cells called yeast or dichotomous multicellular branch chain of cells called molds. The main body of fungi is made up of fine branching colorless threads called hyphae. An individual fungus filament is called hypha. Intertwining of these hyphae leads to formation of a tangled web, and this tangled web is called mycelium. As you can see in this figure, the structure of the fungi, eukaryotic fungi, and you can see the tangled web of hyphae, which is called mycelium. What make them diverse? Their adaptation. And so these fungi live in air, in soil, plants, water. Some live even in the human body. You will be surprised to know that our planet is inhabited with about 1.5 million species of fungi, though only 1 lakh have been identified to date, and a little more than 400 are known to cause disease in animals. And out of these 400, only 200 fungal species are known to be associated with human infections. The study of fungi as animal and plant pathogen is called medical mycology. And fungal pathogens or causes fungal infections, which eventually progresses very slowly. The major source for the prevalence of these fungal pathogens is soil. In majority of the human pathogenic fungi, soil is the main source. So how humans are exposed to the soil? When you walk around the construction areas, when you do hiking, jogging, hunting, fishing, you get exposed to these fungal species, variety of fungal species. But most of the healthy individuals are not affected. Why? Because most of us have an immune system that protects us from fungal infections. But there are certain conditions when a person is unhealthy or a open wound is present, abrasions, burns, inhalation of harmful spores, a particularly lifestyle, AIDS, these individuals are very much susceptible to get fungal diseases. Fungi, as you know, reproduce by spreading microscopic spores. These spores are often present in air and soil. They can be inhaled, or when they come in contact with the surfaces of the body, primarily the skin is the mode from which they come in contact with the human body. These fungal infections usually begin their infection from the lungs or the skin from which they first interact with the human body. Now, who gets the fungal infections? The answer is anyone can get a fungal infection, even those people who are otherwise healthy. But now, who are the people with the weak immune system? Or these are especially the people who are with HIV. All of you know the HIV. And next are the people with AIDS, especially. They are also they have the weak immune system and therefore very much prone to fungal infection. Another group of people who are more prone to fungal infections are the hospitalized patients. Some of the patients undergo organ transplantation and stem cell transplantation. So they have the very weak immune system and they are also prone to the fungal infection. Another group of patients which are prone to these fungal infection are the cancer patients. Now, these cancer patients, when they receive chemotherapy, especially, that affects their immune system, then they become very much prone to the fungal infections. Another group of people who take medication, especially with strong antibiotic therapy, that could also weaken the immune system and makes them prone to the fungal infection. As you can see in this slide, the fungal spores enter the respiratory tract, and from these respiratory tract, they will further affect the human body. So in this figure, you can see lymph node, skin, trachea, and from trachea, lymph nodes, lungs. From lungs, they will eventually spread through the respiratory system to the entire body. So how do we classify these fungal infections? So we can classify these fungal infections mainly into superficial infections and disseminated infections. The superficial infections are the fungal infection which cause only cosmetic problems because they are confined generally to the outer layer of the skin and elicit no immune response to the pathogens. Next category, disseminated infections. These fungal infections affect the whole body. There are about a dozen or more species of fungi that cause several systemic and deep-seated mycosis in man and animals. Not all systemic fungal infections are opportunistic infections. And these opportunistic infections are basically the infections, fungal infection, that will affect or that will see an opportunity to infect people who have weak immune system. That's why they are categorized as opportunistic infections. Superficial infections, as the name indicates, superficial. So they are limited to the keratinized layers of skin, hair, and cells. These fungal species will colonize the skin surface and can cause symptoms. For example, pityriasis versicolor, caused by yeast Malassezia furfur, and tinea nigra, caused by Hortea wernicki. Now, Malassezia furfur, it influences the pigment-producing cells of the skin, and it flourishes on the fatty acids found in sebum. These fungal infection results in the pink rashes on pale skin or hypopigmentation in the darker skin. Hortea wernicki produces melanin. It causes rashes and brown patches on the palms and soles of the feet. Superficial and subcutaneous mycosis. This particular table shows you the site of infection, name of the disease, causative agent, and symptoms. So, as you can see, the site of agent within skin, it is the pityriasis versicolor, Malassezia furfur. It causes flaky, discolored patches on the chest and the back. Tinea nigra, caused by Hortea wernicki. It causes black or brown superficial skin lesions. Another one is ringworm. In Latin, it is called Tinea capitis, caused by Trichosporum and Microsporum species, and it causes folliculitis on the scalps and eyebrows. Another is athlete's foot, very well known as in Latin it's called Tinea pedis, and it is caused by Trichosporum and Microsporum species. Generally, the symptoms include the moist, peeling, irritable skin between the toes in the cleft between especially in the fourth and the fifth toe. Next site of infection, especially is here. The name of disease is whitepedia. It is caused by Trichosporum belgi, and the symptoms of this disease include numerous discrete, soft, asymptomatic nodules loosely attached to hair shafts. Another site of infection is the nails, called Tinea unguium, caused by Trichosporum rubrum, and symptoms include thickened, brittle, crumbly or rat mix. Coming to the next subcutaneous, three diseases: chromoblastomycosis caused by Forensia species, sporotrichosis caused by Sporothrix schanki, and mycetoma caused by Pseudoscalery boydii. Cutaneous mycosis. When fungal pathogens penetrate, overcome the innate immune mucous system, they penetrate the keratinized layer. They penetrate deep enough to produce an immune response. Then they produce the infection that are known as cutaneous mycosis. Examples of these fungal infections is called tinea, ringworm. Infections can come across in different locations of the body from feet to head. These keratin-degrading fungal pathogens are also collectively known as dermatophytes and include species such as trichophyton species and microscorum species. Ringworm and related dermatophytes. Ringworm-like fungal infections, they generally come on the uncovered parts of the body. These infections form circular growths that appear distinct from the normal skin. It may be lighter or it may be darker than the normal skin, and with symptoms such as lesions, rashes on the skin, as well as itching of the infected area. The main sources of such infections are crowded places or presence of unhygienic conditions. So these unhygienic conditions are very much can cause the fungal infections of ringworm and dermatophytes. As the name indicates, from the Latin word tinea captis, it is called ringworm of the scalp, eyebrow and lashes. Tinea crucis, it's called ringworm of the groin, perineum and perianal region. Especially it is known as chalk itch. Tinea unguis, it is ringworm of the nail. Tinea barbae, it's ringworm of the bird. Tinea pedis, ringworm of the feet, especially commonly known as athlete's foot. Tinea meninum, it's ringworm of the hand. Tinea corporis, it's ringworm of the body. So in these figures, you can see in the first figure, you can see tinea capitis. You could see swirly, ringworm, especially on the head. And in tinea corpus, you can see on the lower chest. So these rashes, especially in tinea pedis, athlete's foots, you can see athlete foots, you could see the infection pretty much located on the feet. Next category of fungal infection is the cutaneous or mucocutaneous mycosis. So as the name indicates, when they penetrate the subcutaneous, now comes the cutaneous and mucocutaneous, mucus containing regions. And from that name is derived mucocutaneous mycosis. And especially this is associated with skin, eye, sinuses, oropharynx and vagina. Especially these are the regions which have the mucocutaneous layer and fungal infection infect these regions. That's why the name cutaneous and mucocutaneous mycosis has been derived. Now, what are the opportunistic mycosis? These opportunistic, as the name indicates, opportunistic. They take the opportunity. So these fungal infections, especially in immunocompromised individuals. The category of these we discussed, these immunocompromised patients. We are listing some of the patients of this category once again, whose immune defense mechanism are not working properly. And there are a wide range of clinical conditions which make these category of the patients or people more prone to opportunistic mycosis. What are these factors? Especially these are the factors you can call that predisposed to opportunistic mycosis: organ transplantation, gastrointestinal surgery, chemotherapy to cancer patients, HIV/AIDS, premature birth, old age, use of corticosteroids, broad spectrum antibiotic therapy, usage of catheter, central vesical catheter, and fungal colonization, especially with Candida species, and granulocytopenia. Especially you can see yeast Candida albicans, which cause Cardiomycosis, and filamentous fungus Aspergillosis fumigates, which cause Aspergillosis, are very well known opportunistic fungal infections which cause opportunistic mycosis. Now, pathobiology of Candida albicans. As you know, this is a dimorphic fungus, and fungal infections of mortality rate is especially very high in this category of fungal infections caused by Candida albicans. What makes it very much so virulent? Let's come first to its physiology. As you know, it grows both as mycelia and yeast on the mucosal surface of the humans, especially on the epithelial surface of mouth, digestive system, vagina, and skin. But under certain clinical circumstances, especially which are related to imbalance of normal microbial flora as well as immunosuppression, it causes superficial or life-threatening systemic infections. Especially oral thrush in 90% of all untreated HIV patients, it's superficial, but it could also cause life-threatening systemic infection known as candidiasis or candemia. Especially patients who are seriously ill with prolonged periods of hospitalization, gastrointestinal or cardiac surgery, patients with burn, especially burn patient, and or patients which are having high spectrum antibiotics therapy. These patients are very much at risk with these fungal infections. Candida species, after overcoming an immune response, can cause extensive range of infections, from superficial infections of the skin and mucosal membranes to cases where they can easily infiltrate through the epithelium, and thereafter they are distributed all over the body, and then they can infect large range of tissues and organs such as kidney, liver, and brain. As you can see in this slide, you can see rashes, especially how candida infection occurs in various parts of body. For in the first one you can see on the tongue, in the next one you can see on this throat, neck region especially, in the third one again on the face you can see. So these candida infections are called opportunistic infection and they have a very high mortality rate. Coming to the another fungal infection which has a high mortality rate, we'll discuss pathobiology of this fungal Aspergillus fumigates, and it is considered to be one of the most important fungal pathogens because this Aspergillus fumigates is a species complex relatively than a single species. So it is generally composed of about 10 species. And this fungal pathogen is saprophytic and ubiquitous. Especially it is found in the soil and decaying vegetable matter. This fungi especially grow as a mass of branching hyphae and produce spores. These spores are known as conidia, and in structures it is called conidiophores. So they are habitually inhaled by humans and infiltrate deep into the lower respiratory tract. The most severe disease caused by Aspergillus fumigates is invasive aspergillosis, which occurs almost exclusively in immunocompromised patients. In healthy people, fungal species is destroyed by the innate pulmonary immune system in normal healthy people, so they are not infected. However, the patients with reduced neutrophil counts or impaired alveolar macrophage function, they will proliferate in alveoli. So when they are not treated at the right time and they are undetected, so they will eventually, this hyphae will eventually enter the alveolar wall, penetrating into the circulatory system. Now here is the most crucial part. When it enters the circulatory system, now it's going to reach the other organs of the body and it will lead to cause disseminated aspergillosis. Another fungal infection, Cryptococcus. It is also known as cryptococcal disease caused by Cryptococcus neoformans. It also infects immunocompromised patients such as HIV and AIDS. This fungal infection, the nature of the spread of this fungal infection is especially the bird droppings, especially pigeon droppings found in the soil. So especially the areas which has these pigeon droppings, they are the potential or predisposing factor which will lead to the prevalence of this fungal infection. The symptoms of cryptococcal infection include pneumonia, like illness, shortness of breath, cough, fever, and skin lesion may also occur. These yeast cells disseminated from the lungs into the bloodstream where they reach central nervous system. So when they reach central nervous system, especially brain, and other areas of the nervous system, it will lead to cryptococcal meningitis, which again this disease has very high mortality rates. Its symptoms include fever, headache, or change in the mental status. So systemic or deep-seated mycosis, as the name indicates. So these kind of fungal infections will eventually spread to the whole body. Please remember, not all systemic fungal infection are opportunistic infection. Systemic mycosis due to primary pathogens are usually acquired by inhalation of the virulent spores originating from soil or its related substrata. This disease starts primarily in the lungs and eventually it will spread to other organs. Very well-known examples of this type of mycosis known as blastomycosis, cardiomycosis, and histoplasmosis. The next picture in slide 20 very well reflects how this fungal infection has spread to all over the body. Histoplasmosis. The fungal infection is caused by dimorphic fungus called Histoplasma capsulatum. And this fungal pathogen spread from the soil infected with bird or bat droppings. Especially this soil is very much familiar home of histoplasma. And this disease or prevalence of this fungal infection is very well known in Ohio, Mississippi River Basin in USA. Inhalation of spores produce infection and generally the patients complain of mild flu-like symptoms when infected with this fungal pathogen. In immunocompromised patient or weak defense system, histoplasmosis especially could be life-threatening. Another fungal disease, blastomycosis. Blastomyces dermatidis is well-known causative agent of blastomycosis. It is sexually reproducing dimorphic fungi and very much similar to Histoplasmosis capsulatum and occurs in the natural habitation of soil, especially with or laden with decaying woody material. The infection is acquired by inhaling Candida. These are the spores which germinate to yeast form in the lungs. Then in the lungs spread to elsewhere. These infection causes skin lesions which remain localized, but in some cases they may spread to whole body in the form of widespread ulceration. At present there is no effective treatment against this fungal pathogen, and there are reports of about 30 to 60 deaths each year in USA from this very disease. Coming to cardiomycosis, this is also very well known as valley fever also, because it was prevalent in the valleys, so from there it was name derived as valley fever. Cardiomycosis is known to be the causative agent of cardiomycosis. This very fungal agent is thermally dimorphic and found in the alkaline soils of dry low altitude areas with very high summer temperatures. And when we say very high summer temperatures with low altitude areas, this is very much prevalent in the southwest US and northern Mexico, where US and Mexico shares their boundary, especially in southwest USA and Mexico. This fungus produces spores-like structures, and these spore-like structures are known as orthoconidium. They're carried by the dust storms, and their inhalation by the healthy individuals will lead to development of these orthoconidia into multinucleate spherical structures called spherules, leading to respiratory infection. Cardiomycosis especially generally remains a lung infection, and as you know, in the lung infections generally the symptoms are cough, fever. The patients generally complain about the cough and fever. This infection can also spread to skin, bones, joint, lymph nodes, adrenal glands, and central nervous system, and the victim may have massive external and internal lesion and abscess. Students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this module. As you know, all of us come in contact with vast number of fungi every day, but fewer fungal infections are prevalent. However, the prevalence of fungal pathogen infections has changed a lot in the last few decades, especially in immunocompromised patients with HIV, AIDS, usage of catheter, organ transplantation. This prevalence of fungal infections has infected these immunocompromised patients a lot, and pathogenic fungal infections are increasing at an alarming rate. The HIV and several other diseases, even in cancer treatment, have added to this risk. Superficial infections of fungi are mild because they affect only skin, keratinaceous tissues, and mucous membranes, affecting millions of people worldwide. However, there are good chances that these infections may spread to other areas of the body, giving way to invasive forms, and there are several reports of high rates of mortality as seen in Candida and Aspergillus infections. Systemic fungal infections are caused by an invasive organism, endemic in specific geographical areas, or by opportunistic organism. Incidence of fungal infections and their recurrence, they keep on occurring again and again. So this highlights the need for effective treatment against these fungal infections. Thank you.